I'm AP Townley, and this is Roleplay Culture. Welcome to the next episode of the Level Up series, where we examine fun and cool character builds. We aren't optimizing. We just want a themed character that is fun to play in multiple styles from level 1 to whenever we finish. We're going to examine what others call the Barbarian. I, however, call it the real Berserker, because Barbarian is kind of stupid. If you haven't guessed, we're talking about the Bear Totem Warrior Barbarian. That's a mouthful, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to talk about what I consider the build of the real Berserker. If you know anything about this channel, it's that I like to mix a little bit of real-world history into my D&D. I think it grounds the story and makes it more believable. It might make it a little bit more accessible to a new player that might not be as familiar with the fantasy setting. So why do I consider this build as the real Berserker? The Berserker is also a subclass for the Barbarian. Just like the Totem Warrior, but unlike the Totem Warrior, the Berserker isn't quite as so well loved, despite it being a monster on the battlefield. Its big ability is that when it's raging, it can enter a sort of a super rage called a Frenzy, which allows you to make attacks with your bonus action. Pretty cool, right? Well, unfortunately, once this has ended, you take a level of exhaustion every time. Each level of exhaustion causing ever-increasing and cumulative negative consequences onto your person, with the sixth and final level of it killing you. And remember, exhaustion is one of the few things that doesn't completely right itself after a long rest. You only lose one level of exhaustion that way. Meaning it can take days for your exhaustion to go away, lest it continue to build with each successive rage. It's very harsh. But is that really representative of what a Berserker is? I say, no, it's not. When we think of a Berserker, we probably think of a frothing at the mouth Norse Viking, going crazy on the battlefield. Perhaps also wearing animal skins to enhance their ferocity. Often, though, this is where the werewolf legend comes from. Or maybe even taking drugs to drive their bloodthirsty madness even higher. But is this historically accurate? Well, it seems not. Though there were plenty of stories of soldiers losing themselves to the bloodthirst and going crazy on the battlefield. The truth is that you'll find stories like that in any culture. It's just a fact of war. You'll also find stories of animal hide-decked warriors called Berserkers, fighting fiercely, but never the two meet. These stories seem to speak of two different types of people. So, who were the real Berserkers? In the far north of Europe, amongst the Viking people, which includes like the Danes, the Norse, etc., these so-called barbaric tribes were truly just as sophisticated as the rest, including having royalty. Included with the lords that would rule a set of lands, there were bodyguards and champions for them, the Berserkers. The word Berserker incidentally means bear shirt, suggesting either they didn't wear shirts, historically unlikely, or they were bear skins, which does have some history to it. It's an ambiguous word just like in English. That's also a bit of foreshadowing, which leads us to the Berserker's symbol of office. They would often wear bear skins or hides to denote that they were the Lord's champion and were not to be trifled with. But in terms of D&D, why would a Lord's champion be going off on adventures? Well, that leads us to what a Lord would use their Berserker for. You see, they had a bit of a bad reputation. A Lord would provoke a legal dispute with someone else and then would try to have it settled with a duel. But, as was their right, they would have their Berserker fight the duel for them, and whoever they were facing would then have to face the best warrior in the lands, and I'm sure you can imagine how that turned out. And that can lead to our character's adventuring motivation. A Lord's Berserker champion, shamed by the deeds thrust on them by their master, departs to find redemption in the wider world. That sounds like a D&D adventure. Now, no more dilly-dallying. Let's get to the build of the true Berserker. Or, if you must, the Barbarian. Just remember, as always, if something isn't mentioned here, just pick what you like. We'll generate our ability scores with point buy. Make sure to check your DM to see their preferred method. We'll put 15s in strength and con and a 14 in dex. We'll also probably want a 10 in wisdom for skills. Strength is our big ability, but con is pretty important too, so keep that in mind. For our lineage, variant human. This will increase our strength and constitution to 16. We get a skill of our choice. We'll go with stealth. A strange choice to be sure, but just because we are ferocious in battle doesn't mean we don't know when sneaking up on our enemies is the wiser choice. And finally, we'll get a feat. It should come as no surprise, but we're taking the Great Weapon Master feat, which will allow us to take a -5 penalty to attack for a +10 bonus to damage with heavy weapons. There's another ability here that some seem to forget. If you drop an enemy to 0 hit points with an attack or score a critical hit, you can make another attack with your bonus action. We don't really have anything to do with our bonus action yet, so this is a good feature. With the amount of damage this character can do, dropping enemies to 0 hit points is going to happen more often than not. For our background, we'll choose Outlander, as it fits our wandering warrior on the path for redemption mystique. We get the skills Athletics and Survival, which will both be clutch in adventuring. We'll also get a musical instrument, which could be kind of interesting in a samurai-esque way. Violence on the battlefield, but serenity off of it. Something to do during downtime. As for equipment, we'll get a hunting trap, which goes well with our background feature, and our proficiency in survival, giving us some good utility off the battlefield. Speaking of the feature, Wanderer, which not only lets us know kind of where we are at all times, but lets us source food and water for our entire party. Again, it gives us value outside of just combat. That's important for a well-rounded character, and it's sadly in short supply with the Barbarian class as a whole. So, our first 5 levels will be in Barbarian. We'll get the skills Perception, strongest skill in the game, and Animal Handling. The last will continue to give us out-of-combat options for play and roleplay. You want to raise a little hound to go hunting with you? Go for it. You want a strong horse to be your steed? Have at it. I see this character not as just a warrior with anger management issues, but as a soldier, a hunter, a survivor. We get a D12 hit die, and with our 16 constitution, it gives us some pretty beefy hit points, proficiency in stealth and con saves, as well as armor, shields, martial weapons. Yes, I said armor, because we will be wearing armor, not running around in our skivvies pretending that our thick bods will protect us. We'll buy our equipment outright and pick up a great axe, versatile weapon, equally good at hewing trees as it is orcs, some javelins, no good hunter leaves home without them, and some scale mail armor. At first level, we get our big ability, Rage. Entering and ending a rage takes a bonus action, where we'll have advantage on strength saves and strength checks, +2 to damage, and resistance to slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing damage. So mostly weapon damage, which is probably the vast majority of damage that we're going to run into at this point. We can rage twice a day, and it will last for a minute. We won't bother with the unarmored defense because we're not going to be using it. So to sum up, we have 15 hit points, AC of 16, which is pretty good. And we attack with a +5 to hit, and do up to 1d12 plus 15 damage if we use a Great Weapon Master. That's quite a bit. At second level, we get Danger Sense. You had advantage on dex saves against trap spells, etc., as long as you can see it. You also get Reckless Attack, which allows you to make a melee attack at advantage, but if you do, attacks against you have advantage. Remember that -5 penalty that Great Weapon Master gave us to get that +10 damage? Well, this is how we counter it. At level 3, we get our Primal Path. As has been hinted before, we'll choose the Totem Warrior. We'll get to wear a totem of our choice representing one of the totem animals, which there are quite a few. But of course, we're going to choose the bear to start with. Get it? Bear? Barbarian? Super clever, right? This will give us our big ability right away. When raging, we'll have resistance to all damage that is not psychic. This makes us very tanky, but it's surprisingly balanced. What I like about this particular ability is that it has a nice slow burn to it. At first, you might not notice the difference between this rage and a regular rage. At third level, you're mostly taking weapon damage, with the occasional poison thrown into the mix. But as you increase in level, your enemies grow in power as well. You'll be exposed to more and more types of damage, almost all of which you're going to be resistant to. Whereas other barbarian rages will steadily decrease in usefulness. Yours only grows in strength. We'll have to wear our totem in some way to gain these benefits. I imagine, just like the Berserker champions of old, we'll be donned in bearskins to signify our status. We'll round this very impressive level out by getting a third use of Rage. Not too bad, if I say so myself. Levels 4 and 5 in Barbarian are pretty straightforward. We'll get an ASI at 4th level. We're just going to add +2 to strength, upping it to 18. Easy. Level 5 gives us fast movement, which increases our base speed to 40 feet. This is a lot more useful than you might think. Being able to close the distance to your enemies is critical in both offense and defense. Getting to them quicker lets you get your attacks in sooner. Yes, potentially ending the fight faster, but also tying up those enemies, keeping them away from your party. Forcing them to deal with you first. If they want to get away from you and get to your allies, then they have to risk an attack of opportunity, and you hit very hard. Even taking the withdrawal action probably won't work because they are unlikely to be fast enough to get away from you. We also get extra attack, the big ability of this level. We can make 2 attacks with our action. Now they get to get hit by 2 Mack trucks instead of 1. And remember, our proficiency bonus increases to +3 at this point. As we come to character level 6, we might feel, as many do, that things are getting a little boring, a bit predictable. So we'll take our next level in Fighter. We have to have a 13 in Strength, which of course we do, and we won't get any new proficiency out of it, but we will get 2 new abilities. First, Second Wind, which will allow us to use a bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d10 plus our fighter level, which is going to max out at 3. But still, it's pretty good. It's not bad for a barbarian to get a few hit points back. This ability also recharges on a short rest. The second ability has us picking our fighting style. We get a choice of them, and there are quite a bunch to choose from. Though great weapon fighting and defense are standard choices, we're going to pick something a little more interesting. Superior Technique is a newer fighting style. It will give us a Battle Master maneuver of our choice from the Battle Master list, and a D6 superiority die that will come back on a short rest. We're going to take the maneuver Goading Attack. When we hit with an attack, we spend our superiority die and add that D6 to the damage roll. The opponent makes a wisdom save, DC 8 plus proficiency modifier plus strength. At this level, that's 15, by the way. Should they fail that save, then they will have disadvantage on attack rolls against anyone other than you until the end of your next turn. So what's the strategy here? As the meat slab of the party, it is our job to take the hits that our fellows cannot. We've certainly observed the best defense is a good offense strategy so far. We've also made ourselves a tempting target for enemies with our reckless attack giving them advantage on attack rolls, but we need more. With this ability, we can incentivize the enemy even more to attack us, and not our squishier friends. Have advantage on attacks against us? or have disadvantage on attacks against anyone else. We make the choice easier for them. There are a lot of ways to taunt the enemy, but this is just one of them. We can only do it once per short rest at this point, but that's going to get better later. Our second level in Fighter will give us a very big ability, Action Surge. Once per short rest, on our turn we can take an extra action. Any action. Unlike other similar abilities like the Haste spell, there are no limits to what we can do with this action. More than likely, us being the true berserker selves that we are, we will use that extra action to attack. Remember, at this point we have the extra attack feature. So when we use our action to attack, we attack twice. So we can make 4 attacks in one round, while raging, and using Great Weapon Master, and assuming all attacks hit. That is an average of 90 points of damage. And that doesn't even account for the cleave feature of the Great Weapon Master. Our third and final level of Fighter will give us a martial archetype, which, as we've already gotten a little taste of, will be the Battle Master. This will drive home that we are more than just a raging idiot, but a true warrior of skill. First, we're going to get a set of artisan tools of our choice. We'll pick Smith's tools. This will give us the ability to repair and craft some armor and weapons, as well as other things that will give us even more utility off the battlefield. We can even craft some new armor for ourselves. I say we make breastplate armor. Our AC doesn't go up, but we will be able to make stealth checks without disadvantage. Is there anything more terrifying than a barbarian that can sneak up on you? Let's take a quick pause here and talk about equipment. Along with this armor, we want to make sure, by this point, if possible, we've obtained a longbow for better ranged attacks. It's important to remember that this character is more than just a raging barbarian. Someone from a tribal culture would become proficient in many positions of the clan. Not just a warrior and protector of the tribe, but a hunter and gatherer to feed his people, a scout to see trouble before trouble sees them, and a craftsman when things are needed but no one's around to make them. Our next ability is the real ability we're here for, martial maneuvers. We already know 1, but we will learn 3 more. We also get 4 superiority die that are D8s, which add to the 1 we already have, which is a D6. They are all interchangeable and come back on short rests. The first maneuver we'll take is Riposte. When an enemy misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to retaliate with an attack of your own, adding the superiority die to the damage. Attacks won't miss you too often, but when they do, you're going to punish the foolish. The next will be Trip Attack, which allows you to make an attack and then add the superiority die to the damage. The opponent will make a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. This can slow a retreating enemy down or give you and your other melee-oriented allies advantage on attack rolls, but that's not the best use for this ability. The ability doesn't specify that it has to be a melee attack. So you could use your javelins or bow and knock enemies down from afar, keeping them from getting away or advancing further on you and your party. Or, better yet, use it on a flying enemy. When flying creatures are tripped, they fall to the ground. And remember that for every 10 feet that they fall, they take 1d6 damage. It also puts them in a place where your axe can find them. Our last will be Menacing Attack. We put on our game faces and get mean. When you hit with an attack, you add the superiority dice to the damage, and the target makes a wisdom saving throw. If they fail, they become frightened of you until the end of your next turn. So what's that mean? Being frightened means that as long as the source of fear is in sight, they have disadvantage on all ability checks and attack rolls. They also can't willingly move closer to that source of fear. And just like Trip Attack, you can use this ability at range. Imagine using this on an enemy far away, And not only can they not close the distance to you, but any attacks have disadvantage. What an interesting way to protect yourself and your allies. For the last 3 levels of this build, we'll go back to Barbarian. At level 6, we get the next Totem Warrior Path feature, Aspect of the Beast. We don't have to continue taking Bear Totem abilities. We can switch to another totem if we wish, so long as we gain a totem to have on our person. In this case, we'll choose the Wolf Totem. We'll have a few wolf claws on a necklace. This ability will allow us to track other creatures at a fast pace, which is, about 30 miles per day, or to do so normally while being stealthy at 24 miles per day. And we can be pretty good at stealth too. Normally, you can only track at a normal pace, and travel with stealth is at a slow pace, which is about 18 miles per day. We are a 9th level character at this point, so it's important to see to the needs of the party. If you have another strong tracker in the party, like a ranger, then you might want to choose one of the other options. Honestly, they're all pretty good. We also get a 4th use of rage, which is something we're always in need of. Our proficiency bonus increases to +4, making us a little better at most things. At 7th level, we get Feral Instinct. First, we get advantage on initiative rolls. Beating the enemy to the punch on initiative can sometimes finish battles before they ever get started. But a word of caution. Coordinate with your team. Rushing into melee early might sound good, but if by doing so you deny your wizard like that nice juicy fireball target, well, that's going to spoil the fun. Admittedly, if you're raging, you could just tank that hit, so it might not be that big of a deal. But there's nothing wrong with throwing some javelins or, letting your spellcaster nuke the enemy from orbit. The other use of Feral Instinct lets us avoid being surprised. As long as you use your bonus action to rage, you can act normally during surprise. There's an optional rule from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything available as that we will take, assuming, of course, the DM allows us to take it. Instinctive Pounce lets us, when we use our bonus action to rage, to immediately move up to half our speed, which is 20 feet, by the way. This, in addition to any other movement, will be able to help us get stuck into combat really quick. Barbarian 8 gives us an ASI, which will be really simple, because we're going to take another +2 into strength, up and get to the maximum of 20. This will put us at 11th level total, and which seems like a natural endpoint to most campaigns don't really go much farther than this. Now that we're done with the build itself, let's make a wish list of magic items that we might go well with this character. As always, depending on your table, seeking out or buying specific magic items might not be possible. But if it is, here are some that will go really well with this build. Dragon's Wrath Axe. From Fizzbands, this magic weapon grows in power and rarity the more powerful the dragon horde that they come from, and can continue to grow with the more powerful the dragon that you kill. But to be honest, as long as it's a heavy weapon, any magic weapon that gets us through resistances will do. Goggles of Night. We are human, and therefore cannot see in the dark. This will give us 60 feet of dark vision. It isn't sleek, it isn't sexy, it's just very much needed when you're going into dark and scary places. Unless, of course, you have a nice wizard willing to cast dark vision on you. That would be nice. Cloak of Protection. A Ring of Protection works as well, but that's a higher rarity. And wouldn't it be cool if your Cloak of Protection was your bearskin hide? This gives us a +1 to our AC, which is nice. Better AC is always good, but that's not what we're here for. This also gives us a +1 to all our saving throws. Higher rarities give better bonuses. As I've always said, there are many ways to be a good tank. People focus so much on AC and hit points that they sometimes forget about their saving throws. A barbarian under a vampire's mind control is a terrifying thing for their party to face. This item just shores that up a little bit. Javelin of Lightning. This is a good magical range weapon and an area effect wrapped up in one. Once per day, you can throw the javelin 120 feet, in which case every creature in a 5-foot wide line makes a saving throw, or they take 4d6 lightning damage, save for half. The primary target, if hit by the attack roll, takes the damage of the javelin and 4d6 lightning, no save. After it's been used, it still counts as a magical weapon. This was tailor-made for barbarians who need a little ranged help. A ring of resistance or tattoo of absorption. This should be obvious, but both of these give resistances to psychic damage. The Totem Warrior's one weakness, but I caution the DM about giving this out too freely. Having a weakness, in my opinion, makes a better story. I think no discussion about these types of characters is done without discussing the downsides. Multi-classing comes at a cost. In this case, we miss out on some of the barbarian's higher level features. We don't have brutal critical, which would increase the number of damage dice for critical hits. We lose out on Spirit Walker, which could give us a ritual to cast. We don't get Relentless Rage. That can keep us going even if we drop to 0 hit points. But I think, in this build at least, the sacrifices are minor, and we have a strong build with the Barbarian, or my personal favorite, the True Berserker. A little advice for the DMs out there who might be worried about challenging this awesome warrior. Well, as hinted in some of the wishlist magic items, their mental saving throws aren't great. So a simple whole person can just shut them down in a second. They also aren't resistant to psychic damage either, though I caution the use of that. Apply it too often and they'll think, and rightly so, that they're being specifically targeted. Fighting multiple enemies, some that focus on the character and others that focus on the rest of the party, can put that character in a pickle to choose who to go after and still protect their own party. Some of the other standard party protection abilities like Sentinel and Polearm Master in the hands of the enemy could slow this character down and kind of turn the tables on them. So what name should we give our champion? How about Leif Erikson, after a famous explorer? Or better yet, Freydis Eriksdotter, another person from history, as well as a certain show about Vikings that we won't name. So we have our character, Leif, or Freydis, a hard-hitting warrior who is tough as a bear and a skilled combatant with many tricks up their sleeves to hinder their foes and protect their party. But off the battlefield, they have a place too, able to track and find water and food for their allies, build weapons and armor for the group and themselves. They can even play an instrument, which might win them a free night at an inn. So that is our true Berserker. Totem Warrior, Barbarian, or whatever you want to call it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more episodes of Level Up, then you're going to have to subscribe, smash that like button, ring the bell, leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the parlor.